There is a silent battle happening inside every human being, every single day. It does not announce itself with noise or spectacle. It does not wear armor or carry weapons. Yet it determines the direction of your life, the depth of your peace, and the kind of person you become. This battle is between the spirit and the flesh. One seeks to elevate you, align you with truth, purpose, and divine order. The other seeks comfort, control, pleasure, and immediate gratification. Scripture has warned about this conflict for centuries, but many people still underestimate its power. They believe that simply believing is enough. They think that because they attend church, pray occasionally, or speak spiritual language, they are automatically living by the Spirit. But the truth is far more confronting. To live by the Spirit is not a passive state. It is an active, daily decision. It requires awareness, discipline, and surrender. The flesh, on the other hand, does not need to be invited. It is always present, always ready, always eager to take the throne of your mind and dictate your actions. When the Spirit is not leading, the flesh will. There is no neutral ground. There is no pause. There is no spiritual autopilot. Many people wonder why they feel stuck, frustrated, addicted to cycles they hate, or distant from God despite believing in Him. The answer is often simple but uncomfortable. They are living according to the flesh while expecting the results of the Spirit. The flesh promises comfort but delivers chaos. The Spirit demands discipline but produces life. This message is not about condemnation. It is about clarity. It is about understanding what truly governs your choices, your reactions, your thoughts, and your direction. If you do not consciously live by the Spirit, the flesh will rule you by default. And when the flesh rules, it never rules gently. What you are about to read is not theory. It is reality. It is a mirror. And if you are willing to look honestly, it may change the way you live from this point forward. The flesh is not neutral. It always seeks control. Many people make the mistake of thinking the flesh is simply a part of being human that can be ignored or managed casually. They treat it as something harmless, something that only becomes a problem when it becomes extreme. But Scripture and experience both reveal a deeper truth. The flesh is not neutral. It is not passive. It is not waiting for permission. It is constantly seeking control. The flesh represents the part of human nature that operates independently of God. It is driven by instinct, ego, fear, desire, pride, and comfort. It wants what feels good now, not what is right or eternal. It avoids discipline. It resists submission. It hates restraint. And most importantly, it does not coexist peacefully with the Spirit. The Apostle Paul made this very clear when he said that the flesh and the Spirit are in constant opposition. They want opposite things. They move in opposite directions. One leads to life. The other leads to decay. This is why spiritual stagnation is never neutral. If you are not moving forward in the Spirit, you are already being pulled backward by the flesh. The flesh does not need encouragement. It grows naturally when left unchecked. Just like weeds in a garden, if you do not actively cultivate what is good, what is destructive will take over on its own. No one wakes up one day and decides to lose discipline, integrity, or purpose. It happens gradually, through small compromises, unchecked thoughts, and repeated indulgence. One of the most dangerous lies the flesh tells is this: you deserve this. It appeals to exhaustion, disappointment, loneliness, and frustration. It tells you that comfort is your right, that restraint is unnecessary, that obedience is outdated. And once you begin to listen, it slowly rewires your priorities. The flesh also thrives on distraction. It keeps you busy but unfulfilled. It fills your schedule but empties your spirit. It convinces you that productivity equals purpose, even when you are spiritually dry. And because it does not announce itself as evil, many people live under its rule without realizing it. When the flesh rules, you begin to react instead of reflect. You speak before thinking. You choose comfort over conviction. You chase validation instead of transformation. You become emotionally driven instead of spiritually anchored. And over time, this leads to a life that feels heavy, repetitive, and unfulfilled. Living by the Spirit requires awareness. It requires you to recognize when a thought, desire, or impulse is pulling you away from peace rather than toward it. The Spirit leads with clarity, patience, and truth. The flesh leads with urgency, pressure, and emotional intensity. Another sign that the flesh is ruling is inconsistency. You start strong, but never finish. You make promises to yourself that you don't keep. You feel inspired one moment and empty the next. This instability is not a personality flaw. It is a spiritual signal. It means something other than the Spirit is driving your decisions. The flesh also resists silence. It hates stillness because silence exposes what it tries to hide. When you are quiet, you begin to notice patterns, weaknesses, and wounds that the flesh would rather distract you from. That is why many people avoid stillness at all costs. Noise becomes a refuge. Distraction becomes a shield. But the Spirit speaks in stillness. The Spirit leads through conviction, not compulsion. It invites rather than forces. And when you begin to listen, something shifts. You start noticing when your reactions are coming from fear rather than faith. You begin to sense when a decision is rooted in ego rather than purpose. You become aware of what drains you versus what strengthens you. This is the turning point. Awareness is the first step toward freedom. The flesh loses power when it is exposed. It thrives in secrecy, justification, and denial. But when you recognize its patterns, you weaken its grip. You begin to see that many of your struggles are not external problems, but internal conflicts. And once you see that, you can no longer pretend that nothing can be done. Living by the Spirit does not mean becoming perfect. It means becoming conscious. It means choosing growth over comfort, truth over illusion, discipline over indulgence. It means understanding that every day you are either feeding the flesh or strengthening the Spirit. And here is the truth most people never realize. Whatever you feed will grow. Whatever you starve will weaken. If you feed fear, it will rule you. If you feed discipline, it will shape you. If you feed distraction, it will consume your time. If you feed the Spirit, it will lead your life. This is not about religion. It is about alignment. It is about who sits on the throne of your decisions. Because if the Spirit is not ruling you, something else already is. And that something will never lead you where you truly want to go. If this message is speaking to you and you want to continue learning how to live by the Spirit instead of being controlled by the flesh, subscribe to the channel now. What comes next will help you understand why so many people struggle to break free and how you can begin walking in true spiritual authority starting today. The flesh thrives in comfort, but the Spirit grows through discipline. If there is one thing the flesh loves more than pleasure, it is comfort. Comfort is its greatest weapon because it does not appear dangerous. It feels safe. It feels justified. It feels earned. Yet comfort is where growth slowly dies. The flesh convinces you that rest is the same as peace, that avoidance is the same as wisdom, and that delay is the same as patience. Over time, this illusion weakens your will, dulls your discernment, and disconnects you from the life the Spirit is calling you to live. The Spirit, on the other hand, does not operate through comfort. It operates through discipline, intention, and conscious surrender. Discipline is not punishment. It is alignment. It is the daily decision to choose what strengthens you over what soothes you. The flesh resists this with everything it has because discipline exposes weakness, demands responsibility, and removes excuses. This is why so many people feel spiritually stagnant even while believing in God. They want transformation without tension, They want growth without discomfort. They want strength without resistance. But nothing alive grows without pressure. Nothing meaningful develops without effort. The Spirit works in the same way. It shapes you through challenge, not convenience. The flesh, however, is always looking for the easiest path. It seeks shortcuts. It looks for ways to avoid inner work. It prefers emotional numbing over emotional healing. It would rather distract than confront. That is why modern life, with all its noise, entertainment, and instant gratification, feeds the flesh so effectively. You are constantly being offered ways to avoid stillness, silence, and self-examination. When the flesh rules, your life becomes reactive. You respond to circumstances instead of leading your responses. Your mood dictates your actions. Your emotions become your compass. And because emotions change constantly, your direction becomes unstable. This is why many people feel lost, even when they are busy. They are moving, but not forward. The Spirit, by contrast, leads through clarity. It does not rush. It does not panic. It does not seek approval. It calls you to act with intention, even when it is uncomfortable. This is why discipline is such a powerful spiritual tool. Discipline trains your mind to obey purpose rather than impulse. It teaches you to act from conviction instead of emotion. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you weaken the flesh's influence. Every time you delay gratification, you strengthen spiritual authority. Every time you choose to do what is right instead of what is easy, something inside you becomes more stable, more grounded, more awake. But the flesh fights back. It whispers excuses. It reminds you of your fatigue. It magnifies your doubts. It tells you that tomorrow will be easier, that now is not the right time, that you deserve a break. And sometimes those thoughts sound reasonable. That is what makes them dangerous. The truth is, the flesh does not need to destroy you all at once. It only needs to keep you comfortable enough to stay stagnant. A life without growth feels safe, but it slowly drains meaning. Over time, you stop expecting more from yourself. You stop believing in your potential. You settle for patterns that no longer serve you. This is where many people lose their sense of purpose, not because life attacked them, but because they stopped challenging themselves. They stopped choosing discipline. They stopped listening to the inner voice that was calling them higher. Living by the Spirit requires intentional resistance to this drift. It means setting boundaries when no one is watching. It means saying no when everything in you wants to say yes. It means waking up when you want to sleep. It means staying focused when distraction is easier. It means choosing growth even when it costs comfort. Discipline is not about punishment. It is about freedom. A disciplined mind is not enslaved by impulse. A disciplined heart is not easily shaken. A disciplined spirit is not easily deceived. Discipline gives you clarity. It gives you direction. It gives you power over yourself. And this is what the flesh fears most, self-control. Because once you master yourself, the flesh loses its leverage. It can no longer manipulate you through desire, fear, or insecurity. You stop reacting blindly. You start choosing deliberately. The Spirit empowers this process. It does not force you, it invites you. It strengthens you from within. It gives you the awareness to recognize your patterns and the courage to change them. But it will not override your will. You must choose to follow it. This is why so many people say they believe but live as if they do not. Belief without discipline produces no transformation. Faith without action remains theoretical. The Spirit works through obedience, not intention. When you begin to live this way, something shifts. Your mind becomes clearer. Your emotions stabilize. Your reactions slow down. You feel less controlled by external circumstances. You begin to experience peace that does not depend on everything going well. That peace is not passive, it is powerful. It comes from knowing that you are no longer ruled by impulse or fear. It comes from knowing that you are aligned with something greater than momentary desire. And as this alignment deepens, you start to notice something else. The things that once tempted you lose their power. The distractions that once consumed you no longer satisfy. The noise begins to fade. You become more selective with your time, your energy, and your focus. This is not because you became rigid or disconnected. It is because you became free. Freedom is not doing whatever you want. Freedom is being able to choose what is right, even when it is hard. Freedom is no longer being controlled by urges that do not serve your purpose. Freedom is living with intention instead of impulse. This is the life the Spirit offers. Not comfort, but clarity. Not indulgence, but strength. Not escape, but transformation. And it begins the moment you stop letting the flesh decide your direction. If this message is helping you see your life more clearly and you want to continue growing in spiritual strength and discipline, subscribe to the channel now. What's coming next will reveal how the flesh uses fear and distraction to keep you trapped, and how the Spirit teaches you to rise above it completely. The flesh rules. Through fear, while the Spirit leads through truth, fear is one of the most powerful tools the flesh uses to maintain control. It does not always appear as panic or terror. More often, it disguises itself as caution, logic, or realism. It whispers thoughts that sound reasonable. Don't risk it. What if you fail? What if you lose everything? What if people judge you? Over time, these thoughts build invisible walls around your life. You stop moving forward not because you lack ability, but because fear has convinced you that staying still is safer. The flesh thrives in fear because fear keeps you reactive. When you are afraid, you do not think clearly. You act defensively. You cling to what feels familiar, even when it is unhealthy. Fear narrows your vision. It makes you focus on survival rather than growth. And in that state, the flesh has control. The Spirit operates in the opposite way. The Spirit does not deny reality, but it reveals truth beyond fear. It reminds you that fear is not a guide. It is a signal. It shows you that many of the things you are afraid of have no real power over you unless you give it to them. The Spirit does not remove challenges, but it removes the illusion that you are alone in facing them. One of the clearest signs that the flesh is ruling is chronic fear-based thinking. You overanalyze everything. You imagine worst-case scenarios. You hesitate even when opportunity is clearly in front of you. You delay decisions, not because you are wise, but because you are afraid of responsibility. Fear becomes your compass. The flesh loves this state because fear keeps you passive. It keeps you dependent. It keeps you small. When fear rules, you avoid change. You avoid confrontation. You avoid growth. You stay in situations that drain you because the unknown feels more dangerous than the pain you already understand. The Spirit, however, calls you forward, not recklessly but courageously. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to let fear decide your actions. The Spirit teaches you that discomfort is not a sign of danger, but often a sign of transformation. Growth always requires leaving something behind, and the flesh resists that because it thrives on familiarity. This is why many people remain stuck in patterns they claim to hate. They are not held there by circumstances alone. They are held there by fear of what might happen if they let go. The flesh convinces them that pain is safer than uncertainty. But the Spirit reveals a deeper truth. Stagnation is far more dangerous than movement. Fear also distorts your perception of God. When the flesh rules, you begin to see God as distant, demanding, or disappointed. You assume that every struggle is punishment and every failure is rejection. This mindset keeps you trapped in shame, which further feeds the flesh. Shame makes you hide. Shame makes you isolate. Shame convinces you that change is impossible. The Spirit speaks differently. It reminds you that growth is a process, not a performance. That transformation takes time. That falling does not mean failing. That weakness is not rejection, but an invitation to rely on something greater than yourself. Fear tells you to control everything. The Spirit teaches you to trust. Fear demands certainty before action. The Spirit asks for obedience even when the path is unclear. Fear focuses on what could go wrong. The Spirit focuses on what can be restored. This is why people who live by the Spirit develop a quiet confidence, not arrogance, not pride, but a grounded certainty that whatever comes, they will not face it alone, that confidence cannot be faked. It is built through repeated moments of choosing faith over fear. The flesh hates this because fear is its primary weapon. When fear loses power, the flesh loses leverage. You stop being controlled by opinions. You stop being paralyzed by uncertainty. You stop living in constant anticipation of loss. Another way the flesh uses fear is through identity. It convinces you that your past defines you, that your mistakes disqualify you, that your weaknesses are permanent. It tells you that you are your failures, your trauma, your habits. And if you accept that lie, you will live according to it. The Spirit reveals a different identity, one that is not based on what you did, but on who you are becoming. It reminds you that growth is not linear, that healing is not instant, that transformation happens through consistency, not perfection. When you begin to live by the Spirit, fear does not disappear, but it loses authority. You start to recognize fear as a signal rather than a command. You acknowledge it without obeying it. You move forward even when your hands shake. And with every step, fear weakens. This is where true freedom begins. Not when fear is gone, but when it no longer controls you. The flesh also uses fear to keep you isolated. It tells you that asking for help is weakness, that vulnerability is dangerous, that no one will understand you. But isolation is one of the fastest ways to lose clarity. When you are alone with your fears, they grow louder. When you bring them into the light, they lose power. The Spirit leads you toward connection, honesty, and humility. It teaches you that strength is not pretending to have it all together, but being willing to grow. It reminds you that you are not meant to walk this path alone. Living by the Spirit means choosing truth over comfort, courage over avoidance, faith over fear. It means recognizing that fear will always be present, but it does not have to be in control. You can acknowledge it without surrendering to it, and when you do, something remarkable happens. Your decisions become clearer. Your confidence deepens. Your sense of direction sharpens. You begin to move through life with intention rather than hesitation. The flesh loses its grip, not through force, but through awareness, through discipline, through trust, through consistent choices aligned with truth rather than emotion. This is the turning point for many people, the moment they realize that fear has been shaping their lives more than they ever admitted, and the moment they decide that fear no longer gets to decide their future. If this message is resonating with you, if you feel something stirring inside you, that is not coincidence. That is awareness awakening. And if you want to continue this journey of clarity, strength, and spiritual growth, subscribe to the channel now. The next part will show you how the flesh uses distraction to keep you from your purpose, and how the Spirit teaches you to reclaim focus, discipline, and direction. The flesh distracts you. The Spirit anchors you. One of the most subtle and dangerous ways the flesh maintains control is not through obvious sin or visible chaos, but through constant distraction. Distraction is quiet. It feels harmless. It often disguises itself as productivity, entertainment, or even responsibility, yet it slowly erodes your focus, your depth, and your connection to what truly matters. The flesh does not always need to make you fall. It only needs to keep you busy enough to never rise. Distraction fragments the mind. It pulls your attention in 1,000 directions until you can no longer sit with a single thought, a single purpose, or a single conviction. You become restless. You jump from one thing to another. You start projects, but rarely finish them. You consume information but rarely transform it into wisdom, and over time, this scattered state becomes normal. The flesh thrives in this environment because distraction weakens awareness. When you are constantly stimulated, you stop listening to yourself. You stop noticing your inner state. You stop asking the deeper questions. You become reactive instead of reflective. And when reflection disappears, growth disappears with it. The spirit works in the opposite way. It anchors. It brings stillness. It calls you inward, not to isolate you, but to center you. The spirit teaches you how to remain present. It trains your attention. It teaches you to observe your thoughts rather than be ruled by them. This is why silence and solitude are so powerful spiritually. They strip away the noise that keeps the flesh in control. The modern world is designed to keep you distracted. Endless content, constant notifications, rapid consumption, surface-level conversations. None of these things are inherently evil, but when they dominate your life, they become barriers. They prevent depth. They prevent clarity. They prevent communion with your inner self and with God. The flesh loves speed. It wants everything now. Answers now. Pleasure now. Relief now. The spirit operates in patience. It teaches you that some things require time, stillness, and endurance. It teaches you that clarity is born in quiet moments, not in chaos. When distraction rules, your mind becomes noisy. Even when you are physically still, your thoughts race. You replay conversations. You worry about the future. You regret the past. You scroll endlessly to avoid confronting what you feel. This mental noise creates exhaustion, even when your body has done nothing strenuous. The spirit brings a different kind of energy. Not frantic, not anxious, but grounded. When you live by the spirit, your thoughts slow down. Your awareness sharpens. You begin to notice patterns in your behavior. You recognize which habits drain you and which restore you. You stop numbing yourself and start listening. One of the greatest lies the flesh tells is that being busy means being productive. In reality, busyness often masks avoidance. It keeps you from addressing unresolved emotions, unhealed wounds, and unexamined beliefs. It keeps you running so you never have to face what is beneath the surface. The spirit invites you to pause, to examine, to reflect, and in that reflection, you begin to see how much of your life has been shaped by distraction rather than intention. You realize how often you act without thinking, react without understanding, and choose without awareness. This is not meant to produce guilt. It is meant to produce awakening, because once you see it, you can change it. The flesh resists this awakening because focus is power. A focused person is not easily manipulated. A focused person is not easily distracted by fear, comparison, or temptation. A focused person knows where they are going, and that clarity threatens the flesh's influence. This is why so many people feel uncomfortable when they try to slow down. Their mind rebels, their body becomes restless. They feel the urge to reach for their phone, turn on noise, or distract themselves. That discomfort is not boredom, it is withdrawal, it is the flesh losing its grip. The spirit teaches you to sit with that discomfort, to observe it without reacting, to allow clarity to emerge naturally, and when you do, something remarkable happens. You begin to hear your own thoughts clearly. You begin to recognize what truly matters to you. You start to sense direction instead of confusion. Focus is not about forcing concentration. It is about eliminating what pulls you away from your purpose. It is about choosing what deserves your energy. The Spirit helps you make those choices. It sharpens your discernment. It helps you recognize what feeds your soul and what drains it. As this alignment grows, your life becomes simpler, not easier but clearer. You stop chasing everything. You stop saying yes to what costs you peace. You stop investing energy in things that produce no growth. You begin to move with intention. The flesh resists this because chaos gives it power, distraction gives it cover, noise gives it control. But when you become still, when you become aware, when you become focused, the flesh loses its influence. This is why many people fear silence. Silence reveals, silence confronts, silence strips away illusion. But silence is also where transformation begins. The Spirit does not shout, it whispers, it guides gently, it requires attention. When you learn to quiet the noise, you begin to sense its guidance more clearly. You begin to notice when something is out of alignment. You begin to feel when a decision is right or wrong, even before logic catches up. Living by the Spirit means choosing depth over distraction. It means valuing presence over noise. It means protecting your attention as something sacred, because what you give your attention to, you give your life to. And this is the truth many never realize. Your attention is your most valuable resource. Where you place it determines who you become. When the flesh controls your attention, your life becomes scattered. When the Spirit guides your attention, your life becomes intentional. This is not about withdrawing from the world. It is about engaging with it consciously. It is about choosing when to engage and when to step back. It is about creating space for reflection, prayer, and self-awareness. And as you do this, something powerful happens. You begin to feel grounded. You begin to feel centered. You begin to move through life with clarity rather than confusion. The noise fades, the chaos loses its grip, the distractions lose their appeal, and in that quiet strength you discover something profound. You were never meant to live overwhelmed, scattered, or lost. You were meant to live anchored, aware, and guided. That is the life the Spirit offers. If this message is opening your eyes and helping you regain clarity, subscribe to the channel now. In the next part, we will uncover how the flesh uses desire and impulse to keep you trapped, and how the Spirit teaches you to master yourself and walk in true freedom. The flesh feeds on impulse, but the Spirit forms mastery. One of the final and most decisive battlegrounds between the flesh and the Spirit is impulse. Impulse is the immediate urge to act, react, consume, speak, escape, or satisfy a desire without reflection. It feels natural, it feels honest, it feels human, but unchecked impulse is one of the clearest signs that the flesh is ruling. Wherever impulse dominates, mastery disappears, and wherever mastery is absent, freedom becomes an illusion. The flesh lives in the moment, not in a mindful present way, but in a short-sighted, craving-driven way. It wants relief now, pleasure now, expression now, validation now. It does not consider long-term consequences. It does not care about alignment, growth, or purpose. It only cares about satisfaction. This is why impulse feels urgent. It pressures you, it rushes you, it creates the sensation that you must act immediately or lose something. The Spirit operates differently. The Spirit introduces space between urge and action. It teaches you to pause, to observe, to discern. That pause is where power is born, because the moment you can pause, you can choose. And the moment you can choose, the flesh begins to lose its control. Most people do not struggle because they are weak. They struggle because they live without pause. They react instantly to emotion. They speak as soon as they feel triggered. They indulge as soon as they feel desire. They escape as soon as they feel discomfort. Over time, this trains the nervous system to obey impulse automatically. And what you obey repeatedly becomes your master. Impulse does not only relate to obvious behaviors, it governs thought patterns, emotional reactions, habits, and self-talk. An impulsive mind jumps to conclusions. An impulsive heart clings quickly and detaches suddenly. An impulsive spirit lives in extremes. One day motivated, the next day empty. One day disciplined, the next day indulgent. The flesh loves this instability because instability prevents authority. You cannot lead your life if you cannot lead yourself. You cannot walk in purpose if your direction changes with every feeling. The flesh keeps you ruled by mood, appetite, attraction, and fear. The Spirit forms mastery slowly, deliberately, and quietly. Mastery is not suppression, it is integration. It does not deny desire, it orders it. It does not erase emotion, it disciplines it. It does not eliminate pleasure, it places it in its proper place. This is why living by the Spirit feels difficult at first, because mastery feels restrictive to a mind addicted to impulse. Discipline feels like loss before it feels like gain. Silence feels uncomfortable before it feels peaceful. Restraint feels heavy before it feels freeing. The flesh resists mastery because mastery exposes illusion. It reveals how much of your life has been driven rather than chosen. It shows you how often you have mistaken impulse for authenticity. But once you begin to see this, you cannot unsee it. The Spirit teaches you that not every feeling needs to be followed. Not every thought needs to be believed. Not every desire needs to be fulfilled. And this realization is revolutionary, because it breaks the false identity that says, "I am my urges." You are not your urges. You are the one who observes them. When you begin to live this way, something profound happens. Urges still arise, but they lose urgency. Desires still appear, but they no longer dominate. Emotions still move through you, but they do not control you. You become centered rather than reactive. This is what Scripture means by self-control as a fruit of the Spirit. Not rigid control, not forced suppression, but an inner order, a calm authority, a grounded ability to say yes or no without inner chaos. The flesh tells you that resisting impulse is repression. The Spirit shows you that resisting impulse is liberation, because impulse does not lead to freedom, it leads to repetition. The same cycles, the same regrets, the same exhaustion. Impulse promises relief but delivers emptiness. Mastery demands effort but produces peace. This is why people ruled by the flesh often feel restless even when they get what they want. Satisfaction fades quickly, desire returns stronger, the cycle repeats. But people who live by the Spirit experience a different kind of fulfillment. A quiet fullness, a stable joy, a peace that is not dependent on stimulation. Mastery also restores dignity. When you can govern yourself, you stop feeling ashamed of your own behavior. You trust yourself again. You keep your word to yourself. You become consistent, and consistency builds confidence. The flesh destroys confidence because it keeps you breaking promises to yourself. Every impulsive decision weakens self-trust. Over time, you stop believing in your own ability to change. The Spirit rebuilds that trust slowly through small acts of obedience, restraint, and alignment. Living by the Spirit does not mean you never fail. It means failure no longer defines you. You learn, you adjust, you return to alignment. You do not spiral. You do not self-condemn. You do not abandon the path. Impulse thrives on emotional extremes. The Spirit cultivates emotional stability, not numbness, but steadiness. You feel deeply without being ruled by feeling. You care without clinging. You desire without being enslaved. This is the maturity the Spirit produces, not perfection, but groundedness. As mastery grows, your life begins to change in visible ways. Your habits shift, your priorities reorder, your relationships deepen, your mind clears, your energy stabilizes. You stop living in reaction mode. You start living intentionally. The flesh loses power not because it disappears, but because it is no longer obeyed automatically. Its voice becomes familiar, predictable, and weaker. You recognize its patterns, you see its tactics. And because you see them, you are no longer controlled by them. This is what it truly means to live by the Spirit. Not to float above human struggle, but to walk through it with awareness, discipline, and inner authority. And this brings us back to the central truth. If you do not live by the Spirit, the flesh will rule you, not violently, not loudly, but subtly, daily, through impulse, fear, distraction, and comfort. But when you choose the Spirit, something shifts at the core of who you are. You stop being driven, you start being led, you stop being scattered, you become anchored, you stop being reactive, you become intentional. This is not an abstract spiritual idea. It is a practical way of living, a way that produces peace instead of chaos, clarity instead of confusion, strength instead of exhaustion. And the choice is not made once, it is made daily, in small moments, in quiet decisions, in unseen disciplines. But those small choices shape everything. If you want to continue learning how to live by the Spirit, grow in mastery, and walk in real freedom rather than impulse-driven cycles, subscribe to the channel now. What you are building here is not just knowledge, but a life that is no longer ruled from within, but guided from above.